Hey guys, Magna back here for another Q&A session. I know in the previous video I did say I'd be doing these once a week, but I'm getting a ton of questions in here, and if I try to pack all the questions into one video next week, there will be an ungodly amount and I will never get through them all. So so I'm just doing another episode here really quickly to kind of answer the questions you guys have asked, and I'll do these, I try to say once a week, and that's what I'll try to stick to, but considering we are early on in the episodes, I'm getting a lot more questions than I probably will later on. So just go ahead and get started here. Once again, welcome. I'm trying to play with my lighting a little bit because the lighting in the last video looked kind of crappy, but whatever. So we'll get started here. So the first question we have here, somebody is asking for a request, and if you read through this, it says, I would like if you could touch on what you consider key points for each league as we make our way up the ladder. For example, Bronze League, you should only focus on your mechanics and macro. Having more stuff than your opponent will help you reach Silver. Silver League, etc., etc., etc. You get the point, and they kind of go on for a while about what they want to see done for each league and what you should specifically focus on. I typically don't believe in things like this, and this is kind of a popular thing that people talk about a lot, is what should I do at each league? And everyone's different. Everyone has a different mentality, which is why I try to regulate people back to the fact that no matter how good you are, your macro and your mechanics can always be better than where you are now. So I would say something like this probably won't exist, especially if you're somebody looking for help and you're already, say, in gold or platinum. If I tell them that they need to work on like strategy and micro, but yet they already kind of like cheese their way to that point, then that doesn't really help them. So it's hard for me to answer a question like this, and it's really hard when people ask this because it's gotten to be such a common thing in the community for people to ask, to the point where they think that that's how the game kind of works, that if I'm in this league I need to work on X, Y, and Z. The reality in every single league up until Masters is that you will lose to a player that has more income than you and a player that has more army than you. And we've covered how to get income and army so many times that I feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but that's literally the difference. So if I'm in Masters or whatever and I play somebody that's in Diamond, I'm going to win most of my games just because I'm expanding faster and because I have a bigger army. Not because I know the metagame or the strategies. Of course those do have to play into it at higher levels, but that's always going to be the separating factor. So I wouldn't think of it as I'm X and Y league. You should think of it as a person a league above me does everything better than I do, regardless of what little aspects of the game you want to mention. So somebody, if you're in gold, somebody in platinum, macro's better, they micro better, they're just more familiar with the game more than likely, and you really just need to focus on getting a lot of income, spending it, and then you can start worrying about other things later, like when you lose to specific things, you can see like, what should I have changed my strategy and stuff like that. I have a lot of videos about that, but the basic point is that the macro and mechanics will always, 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 always be the most important thing. So, next question here. Do I have any other reliable ways to harass with Protoss in the late game against Zerg besides Zealot and DT Warpins? Been going up against a lot of Swarm hosts recently, and I'm trying to stay offensive while keeping my Colossus / Void Ray army back to death with Locust Push. I think that means deal with Locust Push. So, not really. If you watch a lot of pro games against Swarm hosts, by the way, I should preface this by saying the Swarm hosts are going to change really soon, so this probably won't matter for too much longer. But the reason that Zealot Warpins especially are really good against Zerg in the late game is because you don't want to spend your gas on just harassment. You wanted to spend your extra minerals you have on harassment because gas is really what's going to determine what you can kind of put out on the field and eventually win fights with. So some other things you can try is you can try like attacking one point of the map and then, you know, attacking the other side of the map with the other half of your army and hoping that you can get them out of position. You can do some cute mothership core recall stuff if you have a lot of like void rays or stalkers or whatever other portion of the army you want to keep alive. So mothership recalls are good, but the reasoning most people go for Zealot Warpins primarily is because it's just a mineral dump, and your gas is really going to determine what kind of units you're going to get up by then. So, yeah. Next question. Hey, do you have any thoughts on ladder anxiety? Any good ways to overcome it? I do, in the sense that Starcraft's a weird game. Like, I've played a lot of competitive games, and I've never experienced being anxious to win the way that Starcraft makes you anxious to win. And it's really funny, and I had to get to a point where I played my own games, and I would just basically say, like, it's just like any other game. It's literally just like if you were to fight somebody in Mario Party, or somebody in, you know, any other game, like a board game. Treat it as just any other game. Any other game, you really don't care as much if you win or lose. And I understand the pressure that you can have on you if you're playing ladder in StarCraft, but for the most part, like, if you're stressing yourself out so badly that you don't want to play, then there's no point in really playing at that point. You should really approach the game that it's just any other game that you can just go in there and play and have fun. Of course, you want to try to win, but I mean, at the same time, it shouldn't be that big a deal. So the good ways to overcome it, I would say, is just play. Just play games. If you're ever feeling anxious, just say, screw it, I don't care. I'm just going to load up a game and play. And you'll get less anxious if you have friends to play with, so you can kind of break in playing against friends, because obviously losing to friends doesn't matter as much as losing to a stranger in a ranked match. So, hey Magna, do you have any tips on how to multitask better? Are there any practice strategies? Multitasking is weird because you only start to approach multitasking when you start to get to a point where you feel like you have to deal like harassment damage and stuff, right? So what I would say, it depends on what race you are. If you really want to force yourself to get more used to putting in more actions, you should try more high APM type of strategies. So this would be like Phoenix strategies with Protoss. You can do that against Protoss and against Zerg, not so much against Terran. And these obviously are going to be a lot harder than the strategies you're going to use normally, so you should expect to lose when you're forcing yourself to learn how to multitask. But if it's to a point where you want to use a strategy for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and use a much harder one, say like for the other races you could do stuff like constant medevac drops all over the map all the time, forcing you to have to juggle multiple things. And then if you can practice winning with something that's a lot harder to do, then going back to a less action intensive strategy is going to be a lot easier. So I would definitely say if you really want to specifically focus on multitasking, run builds that are going to stress you so badly that you won't have the actions to do it, so that you get more used to pouring actions into that and getting more efficient to jump back and forth between the different tasks. Like I said, it comes with a warning label that you will lose a lot if you try something like that, but you definitely should be, if you want to work on different portions of your game, that's something you definitely can do. What is a logical way to harass with Terran versus Protoss? What on earth? Okay, I just got an emergency alert that they're on the prowl for some person in a car, so I guess I'll be off fighting crime after this. Okay, sorry for that. What is a logical way to harass with Terran versus Protoss? A lot of people ask this because they see some openers from pro players, such as like early medevac drops, mine drops, Hellion play, stuff like that. You can do that, but that's really kind of banking on them making a mistake. If you want to do a more kind of macro safe way to harass, you should try to take your third base pretty early against Protoss, and then once you max out on your SCVs, just do nothing but like double medevac drops. Like send double medevac drops to one base, send the rest of your army to another base, and try to get them to a position where they are having to recover constantly to either one harassment or another. I can't believe I got that message of all times in the middle of recording this video, but we've gone too far to go back. I'll read the message to you guys in case you were wondering if it's still up. And I changed my code. No, it's not. Anyway, they were looking for some car, so like I said, I'll be off to fight crime right after this video. Hey Magnet, thanks for this good work. Personally, I think that a good coaching session would be this way. Never seen anybody do it this way. Since a player has a good theoretical knowledge of the game, gold and upwards maybe, this player should play some games against the coach. After that, then both will analyze the replay. I think this could help the student to improve in some aspects in practical ways. They have a dream, play against a really experienced player and see how I could do to know exactly what I'm missing in my game. What do you think about this idea? Okay, so like I mentioned in the previous video, which is where this was from, coaching doesn't necessarily give you the information you need to know. And most of the time when people coach, they'll coach you for like an hour because they can't commit to coaching you for several days on end with no no reward, right? And I understand like you want to get better at the game, but everyone that's really good at the game either has to spend more time practicing so they can win tournaments, or they have other things to do in their life. Like I have a lot of school, I have a wife, I have all these other things to do, so I couldn't devote that much time to it. That being said, I would definitely look for more so like practice partners rather than coaches, so that you can play a practice partner and have them run the same thing into you over and over and kind of get their feedback. Because a lot of times what you need is feedback from other races to give you the perspective that they have. So like I hear people complaining all the time about, I hate Colossus so much and I'm a Terran. Well, to me that would signal that I need to find a way to center my strategy around Colossus. It seems stupid, but I mean, I'm such a non-supporter of coaching for so many reasons. And the main reason being that it is for money for people that are good at it, and a lot of times they're not really that interested in making people better. They're really just interested in giving them really basic information and then getting their money. So, I mean, if I start to coach, I'll experiment with different things, and I don't know if that's going to happen in the near future, but I hope that at least answers your question a little bit of how you could kind of get this effect. This person has a question that says, whenever I face off against Protoss or Terran, they prefer a Stargate opener. From that, they make one Oracle, or two if they're being greedy, hide it out for a while, and then, I think this means to say hit their probes with it, rather than proves, because it doesn't make any sense. Then transition normally. Thoughts, and is it considered cheese? No, one Oracle openers are really, really normal. They're arguably the most stable opener against Terran right now, because you can punish them if they come to attack you with an early aggressive attack. And Oracles actually do pretty well against high Marine counts, especially ones that don't have stim, or combat shields, which they won't have that early in the game. So I think that's totally fine. You should just at least understand your limitations with it. And I wouldn't also hide out your probe or your Oracle for a while. You typically want to send it in to punish them for running a dumb build that ignores it. So the whole goal with the Oracle is just to present a threat to a point where it keeps them in their base, and if they're sitting in their base, you can do whatever you want. So that's the whole point of an Oracle opener most of the time. I wouldn't target it specifically to try to kill workers. Obviously take that if you can get that, but for the most part it's to force them to stay in their base so you can be greedy back at home. With the Zerg and Ravager and Lurker in Legacy of the Void, I think these two, mostly the Ravager, have so much utility that they are useful in every single matchup. What do you think about this? So we'll start with the Lurker, considering I think it's the less useful of the two. The Lurker is mainly to present more game scenarios in different matchups. So, say for example, if it's ZVZ, you won't see Roach Wars all the time because somebody could just get Lurkers and the Roaches don't outrange it as far as I know with the upgrade. I think with the upgrade the range is like, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a Stalker, like 6 or so, and then I believe there also is a range upgrade. Whereas Roaches have very little range, far less than that. I don't want to quote numbers right away because I'm not sure for sure. I can see it in my brain, but I think the number is 3 to 4 range on Roaches. So Lurkers are going to basically be a way for Zerg to finally have ways to just control a map in certain positions. So they'll be able to fight against a Terran army that runs bio without having to run their entire army in. So I think Lurkers especially present brand new game scenarios that we haven't seen before for Zerg, and I really like those. The Ravager is a totally different beast. I played with this in some test games of Legacy of the Void, and the thing is really crazy. Like, it's such a weird thing that they're trying to promote in Legacy of the Void to force the other person to micro against your army basically all the time. And that's what the Ravager does. So I think we're going to see a lot of really exciting things with the Ravager. The Lurker is more so to vary up gameplay, I think. Asking me what I think about it is kind of an interesting perspective, because I could talk about this for a million years and I don't want to make this video too long. But I think they're both in a really good place, and once you start seeing games being played at high levels with Ravagers and Lurkers especially, it's going to look totally different than what we're used to in Heart of the Swarm. So ultimately I think that's a good thing, and I think the fact that the people have to constantly micro around spells and stuff that they can see coming is a really cool dynamic. And one last little remark, you have to wonder why games like League of Legends and Dota are so interesting. And that's partially because you can see the effects of whatever the character is doing, and the other person has to constantly react and respect that, whereas it's not really that prominent in StarCraft 2. I think they're trying to include a little bit more of that kind of interactivity between the armies in Legacy of the Void. Okay, this person says, which builds are the most important ones I should know and learn to master? ZVZ, ZVP, ZVT. The beauty of this is that you can choose a whole bunch of different builds for all these matchups. I would say the most standard ZVZ build is probably staying fairly gasless for a while, getting into roaches and just getting attack upgrades. Going into a game and just trying to outmacro them is typically how ZVZs go at the higher levels. ZVP, if you want to still play really standard, you can play Roach Hydra, start to mix in Vipers as they start to include things like Colossus and just pull the Colossus into your army. ZVT, the gold standard for a long time has been Ling Bane Muta. It's a pretty hard style to run, especially at lower levels like this, so you could do Roach Hydra and ZVT as well and be pretty comfortable. And all of those builds are very standard builds where you don't have to produce huge clutches of units all at once. You can kind of macro normally, so I would say those are probably good ones to start out with. The situation is, this kind of situation is specific, but has happened multiple times. Silver level PvP, go out for an attack around 10 to 15 minutes. He has 10 to 15 Void Rays, enough to shut down my attack, and he just turtles until he has Voids in a mass number. Can't catch up in Void Rays. Excess cannons are not useful to fight into. What would you do in this situation? So, this is a big problem in lower level plays, and that is they'll just flat out ignore what's going on with their opponent for a large portion of the game. They'll have their strategy in mind and saying that, like, I'm going to make Stalkers, or I'm going to make Colossus, and then they won't scout, and all of a sudden, surprise, you have 20 Void Rays, and you don't have the right unit composition for that. So the ultimate answer is to figure out what's happening before he gets to that number, and either be more greedy than him and get into more units, or you can start up the Stargates earlier and just make Phoenix, or make Carriers if you can get them out in time, and enough to stop what he's going for. But it's really a matter of just knowing what he's doing in a timely manner. So you should try to set it up in your brain to scout your opponent roughly once every minute and 30 seconds, I would say, is a reasonable amount of time to expect people to scout. And if you have one sentry, you can roughly get that energy in that amount of time to just send a hallucinated Phoenix into his base and see what he has. So this is really much more so about knowing what's coming before it's coming, and if it gets too bad or if they really commit to Void Rays, you can just put out a whole bunch of Templar and just storm his army, and he'll have a hard time dealing with that. This person asks, how come you don't have your own gameplay series? That'd be so fun to watch. You make a hilarious commentator, you know. So a little bit of history behind this channel for people that are super old school. I tried to be like a commentator for a while, and I tried to commentate on matches. That was a weird bit of music. And it didn't go anywhere because you have to find a way to live in your own space. And the space that I kind of live in is helping newer players that really want a lot of interactivity and really want the things that higher level players already know. And that's kind of what I provide. I don't have my own gameplay series because I don't get a lot of chances to play, and when I do, it's mostly for experimentation. So I don't think that it's fair to show people my weird experiments that I'm running just to see if stuff is viable or just try to understand the way things work. There's so many other streamers that you can watch that are going to be better than I am for learning standard play. And as far as commentator stuff, I'm not pursuing that as much because I can sit in my house, and I have a screwdriver, I don't know why. I can sit in my house and I can make these videos, and I can still get what I want out of being this. So I think I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at. But if commentator stuff started to come up a little bit more, I would look into it. So this person asked on my channel, I noticed you use the grids for hotkeys. I use default. Do you think it's more advantageous in the long run to use grid, or is it purely preference? The only reason that I use grid is because I didn't play an RTS before StarCraft, and for the most part I didn't really play PC games before StarCraft. I was really into, a lot of competitive console games. I was into Halo 2 and 3 for a long time, and then I got into a really obscure game called Shadowrun for the Xbox 360, where I was a pretty top pro level for the short amount of time I played it competitively. and then I got into Starcraft shortly afterward, and I had no concept of mechanics, no concept of hotkeys or anything. So I chose grid because I didn't know what race I wanted to play, and I just thought it was easier to switch between races if I knew the positions of every command on the command card. So that's just the way I learned, but it is purely preference for sure, and whatever you're comfortable with is what you should use. But at the same time, you should also be looking at inefficiencies in your gameplay and see if there's a better way that you can do something. So for example, if you're Zerg, if your injects are always really slow and taking up a lot of time, investigate ways you can make that faster with like base cameras or camera hotkeys or stuff like that. They said, okay, I get this question all the time. It's really overbearing how often I get this question. And this person says, it's on my macro video by the way, which again, you can see which video this is on down in the corner right here. It'll say which video this comment was on. And this is on my macro video for Terran. I get people asking this all the time. And they'll say, why are you pressing buttons on your keyboard so fast if there's no real action behind that? If you're ever wondering why pro players do that, or why people in tutorials do that or whatever, it's just purely a way to keep them ready. It's kind of like if you were playing any console game and you just push the stick around really fast. Like, that's not doing anything other than just keeping you like limber and ready to go when you actually need those actions. So it's more so just kind of like a habit, but it is to try and encourage you to kind of keep your energy up and keep your actions up throughout the game. And if there's nothing to really do, if you're still pushing buttons, at least your brain is still having to work to do something on a fast tempo. So it's really just to maintain tempo and maintain the actions you might need later. I just bought my Starcraft 2 and its expansion a couple months ago. Really dig your guides and the like. This is kind of oddly phrased. And by the way, one quick thing here is that I get a lot of non-native speaking people that comment on my videos, and I have to say I really love that so much. So if I mispronounce anything that you type or your name or whatever, I'm so sorry, but I'll do my best to kind of gloss over it. I really have admiration for everyone that learns English as a second language and interacts with the rest of people, because we here in the United States are very dumb about that, and we just learn English and that's it. So thank you for all the foreign people that tune in. But they said, I would like to ask if you would update your guides in tune with the recent patches, and if you will analyze replays at least one every day. I'm looking forward to your projects in the future with full support. Thanks. So the problem with getting replays is that most of what I got was from WCS seasons, which is the pro circuit for StarCraft, and they only release once every 4 or 5 months. And I typically only review a lot of replays if I need to make videos about them. I will watch a lot of the broadcasts, so I'll still kind of get information from the broadcast, not as much as I would from a replay necessarily, but yeah, it's hard for me to update my guide so much because I think for each race I probably have like 30 videos, and each video is about 20 to 30 minutes long, so that turns out to be insanely a huge amount of work. Like, the amount of work I did over the summer just to make all those guides as big as they are was insane. I still had 2 summer classes that I was going to for college, and I probably put a good 60 hours a week into reviewing replays and making videos and stuff for those guides, and I just can't afford that unless I don't have much else going on. So in the future, I'm going to try to make less videos with more concentrated content. I will review replays whenever I'm going to be making videos about it, so I'm not just pulling from some random site of, you know, like Platinum League players and preaching that as truth. Definitely going to grab whatever I can get as far as pro level replays, and typically those are WCS ones, and they only come out about once every 4 months or so, considering there are 3 seasons a year. Okay, I think this is the last one. You should know I'm a Terran player. When going in for an attack, what do you do if you're attacking their base and at the same time they attack your base? Happened to me in a match recently, and he GG'd it just 10 seconds before the stalemate timer expires. It just seemed that if your army is at their base and they attack you, there isn't a way to defend it. Lifting off usually doesn't save much due to the overlordish movement speed of the buildings. It's also getting hard to save the workers in that situation, especially when they have siege tanks and TVT. So this is a lot based around the fact that you need to know what your opponent's army is doing a lot of the time, and especially later in the game as Terran, you should be able to burn scans and kind of figure out what's going on. If their army isn't sitting in a predictable position, then you have to be like, Okay, he's not back at his base, he's sitting somewhere weird on the map. I need to figure out where he is on the map and see if I can make that work to my advantage. I think TVT base trades are probably the easiest to win because siege tanks are so strong in TVT, so if you realize that that's what's going to go on, and if you have to base trade for some reason, try to set up a little deposit of tanks somewhere and try to make him trade ineffectively against it. But for the most part, you can just avoid base trade stuff by just knowing where his army is and just making sure that you're meeting his army in an advantageous position rather than just walking across the map and not realizing that he's on the map. And I know it can be hard to do stuff like that, but if you're really wondering, if you're getting ready to attack, just send one Marine out in front of your army so that it'll get to his base, or send it on a weird path around the map somewhere so that you can see with minimal risk what's going on. Okay, I'm wrong. There was one more. Okay, so it says, hey Magnet, here's my question. Do you have any general tips on how to learn efficiently any given build, or like practice versus the AI, linking its elements, etc.? How do you do that yourself when learning a new build? When I'm learning a new build, I will actually play against the AI. I'll play against an AI that doesn't do anything, mostly because I want to practice how the build feels. And I want to practice swapping out different elements. So say for example, I'm running a build and I want to get a Stargate up, but I have a point in my build where I have 200 minerals and 100 gas. I want to see, like, okay, is there a way I can switch up my gas timing so I can get the Stargate faster, so that when it's time for a Stargate I have 150, 150 and I can drop it right on time. I'll basically look for small little things like that in the build and see if I can make those things better and swap out some different things if I think it'll be more efficient. If you want to just learn an entirely new build that's already planned out, try to just run it against a very easy AI which won't do anything at all, and just make sure that you can hit the steps at the right times. Because any build you can do that. Like, the builds are literally written so that anybody can do it if they do it on time, and you don't have to be like a god of the game to do that. So that's what I do. Some people like to practice against practice partners because it stresses the real-time alterations they'll have to make to the build. And I talked about it a little bit in that big series that I released as far as how to practice builders and stuff like that. But I would honestly just run it for about 5 or 6 games versus the AI, or how many times you need it for it to be comfortable, and compare what you have versus wherever you got the build from. Like, if you're copying it from a pro replay, see what they had at a certain time, assuming they didn't lose anything, because that always skews up the numbers, and see if you're close to it, or at least close enough, and just keep doing it over and over and over. And if you make a mistake, just kind of note it and move on to it and try to improve it on the next game. Or if you want to be really hardcore, you could just be like, I made a mistake, I quit, I'm starting over on the next game. So just depends on what you're comfortable with, but different people do different things. I'm usually comfortable enough to a point where I understand how a builder is already laid out, so I don't think that the way I do it is that special or insightful, considering we're in totally different positions here. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but for the most part, just try to compare with what you're getting it from, whether it's like a pro build or a forum or something, and see if your timings line up. And just keep doing it until you can get reasonably close to those. I think that's it, right? Yeah, okay. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Leave a question down below on any of my videos, or on this one especially. We'll kind of get priority if you want me to answer it in future ones. I'll be back soon with more stuff, and I'm going to make these as frequently as I can. It'll probably be around once a week. And I'm also going to try to avoid duplicate questions as much as I can. I'll just be like, hey, I've already answered that in another video, just watch a different one. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you real soon. Take care.